Hello and welcome to the fifth episode of the Anti-Professional Podcast. I'm here with Erica Lovecraft, copywriting wizard and member of the Magical Weirdo community. And I'm going to open with my customary poem, which goes like this. Erica Lovecraft, Flynn writes, equality, courage, and marriage rights. Comfortable, friendly, accessible, and true. Copywriting wizard to give your customers a clue. Magical weirdo in membership and spirit, writing for you exactly when you need to hear it. Idea Collective is where we met. The future isn't written yet. So if you'll indulge me and simply let me welcome you to the conversation. Thank you, Erica, for being here. I wonder where we'll be next year. Let's get started and make the most of this time. So now I'll conclude my meandering rhyme. Here we go.
That's amazing.
And that's what I have for you.
Thank you. Wow.
Yeah. It's been a fun challenge. I always rate them right before. So I'm like, okay, what's coming through?
Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah. Let's talk about a time crunch that'll get your brain juices flowing.
Yeah, I'm sure as a writer, you know about, how creative constraints can sometimes.
It's like, oh, make it go.
Mm-hmm. So then, in a more formal way, I'll let you introduce yourself. And I typically ask people, who are you and what do you stand for?
I am Erica Lovecraft. My business name is Flynn Writes. My middle name is Flynn, so that's where that comes from. I am a copywriter and I write for business and life coaches to help them improve their online presence and get them more customers and make them more money. What I stand for? That's a big question. Personally, I love being a freelancer and having my own business and being away from corporate America. And I'm just a human getting along in the world and trying to survive this lunacy that we call life. Yes, that's where I'm at.
That's cool. Yeah. And I want to say thank you for bringing some magical, anti-professional, sparkly,
for a little bit of bling.
Yeah. I decided, I was like, I think I want to wear a cloak for this one.
Nice.
Just felt right.
This is a necklace that I wore at my wedding, actually.
Oh, so. That's very cute.
Yeah.
Oh,
so it's the purple room, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did not play in this.
There we go. Yeah.
So the second question I always like to ask people, I'm curious, what has been your experience with the concept of professionalism? Like early career to becoming a freelancer. Like, what did it mean to you, and how do you feel about it now?
A lot of it, I think, is wrapped up in corporate America and like cubicle life. Last corporate job I had, I was there for about 3 years. It was a financial technology company, and it was, business casual. And I hate dressing up in any way, shape, or form. So that was always a stressor because I'm like, I just want to wear jeans and a t-shirt. Come on. But I mean, that aside, I remember it was during the so-called Trump presidency, and just coming into work, and when the latest travesty was happening in our nation and with our government, and coming into work and everyone's just at the cubicles working like everything is fine and nothing is wrong. And I was just freaking out inside because I'm like, do you not realize just how awful things are? And just going out of my mind, just not being able to express anything. So part of like corporate America is always, no religion, no politics. And you're supposed to just get along and then just put your head down and do your job. That's not how I live my life. I can't separate my brain like that. It just doesn't work. And so I eventually ended up leaving that job and was glad that I did. But I just don't know how people do it. Like I don't know how people leave their feelings at the door and their morals and maybe people don't, and it's just me. I don't know.
Yeah, I've noticed that some of us are more deeply affected, I think, by, for me, it's like a desire to help. But for others, I think it's like really challenging to like pretend that nothing's going on. I have a really hard time like not saying what's present for me And I think I can relate to that. Like, and even if I just get it out, then I feel better. But if I'm not allowed to talk about it, it's like I always call it like emotional constipation, which I don't think is good for
Yeah,
anybody.
it's just a weight on your shoulders. It's just a,
Hmm.
a huge weight. Yeah, and it doesn't go away.
Hmm.
And trying to go in day after day and grade cubes and working with something as boring as financial technology anyway. I'm just
Hmm.
like, oh man, no way.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
I can imagine. Yeah, and I know in tech, there's also, at least in my experience, people typically will be coming from a certain degree of privilege, and people from certain privileged communities aren't as affected by things like the pregnancy, the Trump presidency.
Right.
Like, for instance, even, during the Biden administration right now, there's a bunch of anti-trans bills. There's always all kinds of horrible systemic, racist violence, homophobic violence. And, for some of us, it's like directly affecting our uh, existence
Ability to
versus for
exist.
other
Yeah.
people, they're just like, doesn't really bother me.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, one of the reasons my wife and I got married when we did last year and we didn't wait is because we didn't know if the Supreme Court was going to overturn marriage equality.
Hmm.
And so we're like, well, we better get it done. Let's do
Hmm.
it. So yeah, I mean, luckily that hasn't happened yet, but who knows? Like, so then we live in very uncertain times,
Hmm.
especially if you're in a marginalized group. So, um, yeah, it's it's it can be tough out there.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's tough, I think, like you say, to like put it in a box and pretend it's not happening and just keep, plugging along for your corporate overlords. Even if you
Exactly.
love your job or even if you love what you do, it's really hard to, try to sustain that energy when there's kind of these like psychic attacks coming from many sides. Um,
Mhm.
I noticed when you applied for the podcast, one of the things you said was that you wanted to talk about your experience in corporate America. And I'm curious if there's any like stories coming to mind or like specific experiences that you think relate to professionalism or sort of you recognizing that environment wasn't where you wanted to be. Like, curious if there's anything that sort of compelled you to even, to be on here today.
I mean, honestly, I feel like the whole thing was just anathema to my being. Like corporate America just doesn't work with me. And yeah, corporate overlords. Um, like I can't, just no bosses. I don't
Hmm.
want bosses. I don't want underlings. I don't, I have had good bosses and I've had bad bosses. Um, they, the good ones are worth their weight in gold. Um, and the bad ones can make your life miserable.
Hmm.
So, now I'm a freelancer and it's just me and my clients and I love that. Um, just working that way. It's very clean. I do a good job. They're happy. We move on.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, with the professionalism, yeah, I think it's just an odd thing how corporations will oftentimes try to talk like we're family. I
Hmm.
don't know if you've ever experienced that in corporate America. Like,
Oh yeah,
yeah, like
like
we're
right before I got laid off. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like your family right until they decide you're no longer needed, and then
Hmm.
and then you get laid off or whatever. And I never had the experience of being laid off, but I was in a department where we went through a round of cuts, and that was very difficult for everyone. Uh, and of course, a lot of people are going through that now.
Hmm.
Whether they're the ones that got laid off or they're working in a situation where like they don't know if they're the next, to
Hmm.
get chopped.
And
Um,
they have twice as much work and no acknowledgement of that fact.
exactly. And like, is that what professionalism is? Like, are you just supposed to put up with it? Are you just supposed to, do now double, triple the work and are we calling that professionalism or are we calling that overwork and outrageous?
Hmm.
And I think that's a matter of each person has to decide that for themselves in a way. But I mean, if I can speak personally, I mean, my wife's in a situation where she's doing like three people's worth of work.
Hmm.
And is she getting paid three times more? No,
Hmm.
that's not a thing. Uh, yeah. Does she want to escape? Yes. Uh,
Hmm.
and and this isn't a secret. Like everybody knows. Like I'm not giving away her or her situation, but yeah. Like how do we reconcile an individual's needs versus our corporate overlord needs? I guess
Hmm.
is kind of how I'd say it. Like we're all humans. We have needs. We have desires. I mean, everybody's got to, we have to work for a living. We got to do something. I believe that. Like, you know, unless you're born wealthy or something, I still think you should earn your own darn money. But
Hmm.
like, most people have to work for a living, so go do something. Um, but I just hope that we're not forced into a box or that we're not forced into something that is untenable, and so many of us are.
Yeah,
Uh, so yeah.
I feel like that structure, it used to be like you get a job, you get an entry level job, work your way up, you get taken care of for life, and you sort of like it's almost like getting married when you started a job.
Hmm.
And I feel like that has been less and less the case from both sides, honestly. But I think the remote work revolution and how everything's changed from the pandemic, I would be shocked if we don't operate on almost entirely a gig economy
Right.
very soon. Which in some ways I think is great because when I worked in corporations, there were a lot of people who did not actually do their jobs. They just collected their paychecks and were happy to let me, do 70% of the work of the department or,
Mm.
not all of my jobs, but in some of my jobs, it was sort of like there were no real metrics for how much you completed. And I think if we move to sort of a gig economy basis, we could see, like, oh, I completed, this many articles today and this is what I get for that. And then similar to like driving for Uber, it's like, well, how many hours you want to do this? What's it worth to you? Um, so I hope that that's for the best. Um,
Yeah, I
but
hope it is okay. Like, I mean, I like getting paid for output and not for simply being present.
mhm,
I mean, I don't work 8 hours a day. I don't, you know, I it, that's not a thing for me anymore. I mean, I do. Well, I mean, if you count everything for my business, maybe I do, but my actual
mhm,
writing is not 8 hours a day, and that would not be possible for me.
mhm.
Um, just the way the creative energies work and everything.
Writing is very
But
intense. Yeah.
yeah, but I don't have to sit in the cubicle for 8 9 hours a day, spend an hour commuting, and then get a check for less money than I make now.
Mhm,
Yeah, and um, so I hope that that would work out for everybody. I wish everybody could have that kind of flexibility and that do something that
mhm,
they enjoy. But like you said, like back in the day, like my grandfather had a factory job, and he I don't know what exactly did, but he raised a family of 6 kids on his factory job,
mhm,
and that was I mean, and they weren't rich, but I mean, they had food, they had clothing, they had the basics, uh, and you could do that. And I think his
mhm,
generation was the last one that really had that situation, and
mhm.
it's not really a thing anymore. Like there's no loyalty, there's no like we're going to take care of you
There's
or
no
anything like
security
that.
for
There's
sure.
no, yeah, and yeah, definitely not. So yeah, I think you have to create your own security, and
Mhm,
um, in regards to the professionalism and how that relates to security. I mean, you can get your corporate job and feel like that's secure because like it can feel a lot more secure than freelancing.
mhm,
But in reality, they could just let you go tomorrow.
mhm.
It's not yeah, it's not reality. So what road do you choose? How do you how do you navigate? Um, and that's the tough question, really.
Yeah, I remember, when I did have my last corporate job, I've never been fired before or let go. So I
Mm.
did not expect to be let go. And I thought that I had security. I was like, obviously, I'm doing all this work and I'm showing up and I'm, leading all these groups and I was putting in all these extra hours. And I really thought, if I gave it my all, I was like on track to get promoted and all this stuff. And nope, turns out for, various reasons that I will not get into because I don't have a lawyer, I was, included in the layoffs. I don't believe it was performance related, but I don't know. Um,
Yeah. And a lot of
uh,
times it's not at all, because they'll just have a company come in and randomly lay off people in the department so that no
mhm.
one could ever claim that they got laid off because of XYZ illegal reason. You ever hear of that? Yeah.
I haven't
So
heard of that.
yeah, yeah. So they'll actually hire a company to come in and do that so that their company, the one doing the layoffs, can't be accused of illegal layoffs.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, we could tell because we all rallied together afterwards that there were certain groups that were very much disproportionately affected,
Oh,
like very
interesting.
obviously.
Wow.
Which, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm
Maybe that
not
wasn't the
not
thing
naming names,
in your
not getting
case.
into specifics, but
Right.
yeah, yeah. Now that gag clause thing is lifted, I'm like, well, I still don't know what that means.
Yeah,
Um,
I feel
and
you.
plus, I don't have time for lawsuits. I'm doing other things, but success
Yeah,
is the
no one
best
has
revenge, as they
energy for
say.
that. Yeah.
Um, but what was I going to say? Oh, I was curious to chat with you. This is, I guess, just a relevant topic, even if it's not necessarily about professionalism. As a writer, I'm very curious to get your take on, this whole AI revolution. For a
Mm.
lot of my work, I like using AI as like an assistant, or for research. I know some writers are like never, and so I'm curious what your what your take is on it.
I will be honest that at first I was afraid because I was like, oh gosh, like AI is going to take over and they're going to write all the things and I'm going to have to find something else to do. Um, that was not correct. So,
Mhm.
uh, so then I learned about what AI can and can't do. And like you said, it's a great tool. It's a great assistant. Um, uh, and it's I use it sometimes. I'm really just a beginner. I know that there's a zillion AI tools out there, and um, I'm mainly using Chat GPT. And it can come in really handy if you're just kind of stuck. And
Mhm.
you're like, oh, I need a title. Give me some title ideas, and it'll come up with 10 or whatever, and then one of them will be kind of good, and you'll be able to finagle it into something that you like.
Mhm.
And so now you have your title, whereas before you had nothing. So that's just a bonus.
Mhm.
And you're still using your smarts. I'm still using my skill as a writer because I need to know which one of these 10 options is actually decent.
Mhm.
I have to
And
pick
how to
it.
format it, that last 90% to really make it perfect.
Yeah, yeah. I still have to use my skills. Uh, Humans still have to be involved, uh, unless you just want some generic content. I mean,
Mhm.
sometimes generic content is fine. But if you want it to sound like a certain person, if you want to be specific, you want to get some emotion in there, have
Mhm.
a real call to action, you'll need to have their human involved too. So
Yeah, and I find
yeah.
so much of my writing is about taking what the popular narrative is and challenging it. And so sometimes it can
Mm.
be really helpful for like, what are, the five most common things that you'll hear in a sales training? And then I'll talk about why every single one of them is wrong, you know? So it can help me figure out like what has been talked about to death and how can I challenge that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And the visual AIs are getting really interesting too.
Hmm.
Like they can, you tell it, draw me a cartoon of, you know, monkey with an apple or something. It'll come up with a pretty good visual of that,
Hmm.
uh, or whatever you want. Um, Fascinating. Um,
Yeah.
I just wonder where all that's going to go. I mean, for visual artists, that has to be a little more scary because I don't. I mean, I'm not a visual artist, so I don't know how they. Of course, they add value, but like how do you differentiate when you're in that space? Now you have AI
Yeah.
that can just do, whatever.
Well, I think what's interesting about that is I think I have sort of three threads on that. One is as a visual artist who has used AI for visual generation, it is extremely hard to get the AI to actually make the thing that you want it to make visually. At least in my experience, if you have a really specific vision, it can be very, very hard to really get the output you're looking for, unless you're like a prompt engineer, which some people are. And that's great. That's a whole skill that some artists have. The other is I have a friend he'll do multiple AI outputs and then he'll make a collage of all the elements and create like a huge digital painting from all these different elements. He's even making an entire tarot card deck, which is kind of cool. And so I see artists sort of utilizing it similar to writers, like bits and pieces and drafting something larger and more fantastic while saving time. And then I think there's always going to be an appetite for human expression. Even if those portraits are really cool and I didn't have to pay somebody $200 to paint a portrait of me, there's just so many other things that I think it's wonderful to discover something that somebody made and to try to understand that piece, more than just like, oh, I want a picture of my dog in a suit. It's like, okay, cool. That's a thing. But like, sometimes you see a work of art that like Starry Night, like
Really
that
makes you
means
think.
so much to so many people. And even if AI could generate something derivative of it, I don't think AI could have generated the first and the meaning behind it and the cultural ties to it because of the person who created it, where they were. Like, I think storytelling and the human element is always going to be compelling.
I agree. Yeah, the human element too in writing is, it's all about storytelling or having a personal connection or a personal story that an AI is just not going to have, and pulling that in, creating turns of phrase that I always get excited when I come up with something that I'm like, oh, I wonder if anyone's ever written these 5 words together in that particular way. That's that's kind of neat. It doesn't happen often, but occasionally. And just AI has a long way to go if it's going to vie for human creativity, I think. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, I don't know how this sounds, but I kind of feel honestly this way. If AI does replace a lot of like tech jobs or stuff like that, we really need tradespeople. I keep saying we need to make the trades sexy again, because young people need to be becoming plumbers, becoming like builders, and maybe AI and robots will eventually replace that also. But currently we have like a huge shortage of tradespeople. So it's like, for me, my first business was an illustration business, and it was so hard to get paid and so frustrating to work with clients around trying to bring their vision to life that I ended up like painting houses instead and then drawing what I wanted to draw when I wanted to draw it. And for me, that was a better balance. I got to make my art on my terms and then learn a trade. And I think that's not a bad path, personally.
Wow.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a huge shortage of nurses. There's, AI is not going to replace nurses anytime soon. There's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot that. Yeah, I don't know where this is gonna go. Like you said, like with like tech and kind of computery jobs, AI might take a lot of those away, and even like self-driving trucks and cars, and that's not far away either. There's a whole lot
3D
of truckers
printers
on the road. Yeah, like wow, yeah, and the people got to find something to do to support themselves. So yeah,
I think in the event that AI like works us out of the job, I still don't think that's a bad outcome. If like as long as it's sort of like across the board. If like in general, like people are like, I don't know if we need jobs anymore, and then people have the freedom to do what they want. I don't think that has to be bad. I know some people are like, oh, well, if there's no jobs, people won't do anything and they'll get depressed and do drugs. And it's like, well, I think that's only true if there's if what?
I think that's BS. Yeah, that's a BS argument. Yeah.
I think people who weren't going to do anything are going to keep not doing anything. But the majority of us have a lot of passion and drive and curiosity that we just don't have the time for because of capitalism. So if I only have to work 3 hours a week because of AI and the rest of the time I get to garden and like, make music, that sounds great.
That's awesome. Yeah. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of universal income, where just everybody gets paid X dollars a month, and you get to use it how you want and go forth and live your life. Well, cool. Like, okay, so now I'm going to spend my time writing the giant blog that and website that I have in my head but don't have time to write, and like you said, gardening, and that'd be awesome. Would I still write? Yeah. Would I have to scramble as much? No. Like, yeah.
Right. And if your base needs are met, you might even be a better writer. Yeah. I know myself, when my base needs are met, my output is a lot better.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, life is a lot more stable right now for me personally, just because, I'm married, and, my business is a few years old. I've got some clients. It's pretty okay, but, for people just starting out, it could be pretty tough. Going down the freelance road, or just trying to get a job, like get a job, any job could be tough. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think part of why I leaned into self-employment after getting laid off was partly because the state of Oregon will give you your full unemployment if you start a business, and then you don't have to apply for jobs, which is great. New York also does that too. Mississippi, New Hampshire, and Delaware are the 5 states that do that. I have a bunch of resources about that I'm very passionate about sharing, but basically they gave me $20,000 to start my business, and I was like, okay.
Yes,
but I also wasn't ready to get hurt again. Like, I put so much of myself into that job and was so hurt by a lot of things, not just the layoffs, but asking for accommodations got really shut down. There were just so many things where it was during the interview, it felt like a great first date where they're like, we're going to go on vacations and I'll make you dinner and I'll always listen to you. And I just want you to be yourself. And then, you get into the relationship 6 months in and it's super toxic. And you're like, oh, this is not really what you said it would be. So I think I just wasn't willing to put myself in that position again, or go through the stress of applying for so many jobs every week. And I think freelancing or having your own business is really stressful, but like you said about creating your own security, I know that I can make money. And if it's not doing this, I can make money painting houses, or I can make money, selling feet pics, whatever I got to do. I'm a resourceful human being who is capable of marketing and that, that I'm lucky that that's my special skill, but pretty much anything I want to do, I can sell to people. I've been toying with coming up with an online course called the MBA, the Master in Bullshit Artistry, because my special skill is I have walked onto construction sites with no experience and asked if I could paint, and they have hired me. So I'm pretty good at convincing people that I can do stuff that I've never done before. And then, I'm an improviser, so I figured out.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's my security.
I know, worst came to worst, I would just go get a job at Meijer again, our local grocery store. I worked there during the pandemic part-time, and left to kind of do my writing thing with, more hours on the day. But, if I could always just go back, it's fine. Yeah. Yeah. Right. So I don't feel like there's any danger of, going hungry or something. It's not a thing. So.
Yeah.
I have that privilege, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I always lament that my favorite job I ever had was working at a deli, but it's really hard to make 6 figures working at a deli.
Yeah.
But if I could, that's what I would do. I like making sandwiches for people. It makes me really happy.
I really enjoyed working in the garden center at the supermarket. It was great. It was outside and we were working with plants. And people wanted advice on which beautiful flower to put in their yard. Heck yeah. I might do that anyway, if,
right.
So yeah, it it only got lame because the hours and there was some other nonsense. But the actual working in the gardens, yeah, it was great.
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah. I wish those jobs, I wish UBI was a thing, because if it was, I would gladly put like 5 hours a weekend at a deli for sure.
yeah, yeah. Get out of
Uh,
the house, serve some people,
yeah, that's why I'm,
interact with, random humans.
yeah.
Yeah.
And,
It's fun.
yeah, that little bit of chaos, I think is very healthy for us.
Yeah.
Um, oh, so I have a question for you from my grab bag of questions, actually.
Sure.
I'm curious, within the copywriting world, and it's okay if there is not an answer to this, but is there something about your field of expertise that other people disagree with you about, or that you disagree with in the mainstream narrative about copywriting? It's not the most drama-fueled space, to be honest, but I'm curious.
Yeah, copywriting world. Hmm. I mean, there is like kind of the feeling of competition, which I don't get from a lot of copywriters, but I know it exists out there where uh, a writer might feel a little bit protective of their knowledge or their niche or whatever because they don't want someone else to take their spot, so to
Mhm.
speak. Um, but in general, I've found that most writers do understand that there's plenty of work out there. Everybody needs
Mhm.
copy. Everybody, the world of social media is, just the amount of blog posts and Instagram posts and everything is just, millions a day,
Mhm.
millions, and everybody has to write that. So there's plenty of work out there for everybody who wants to go into copywriting. I've even met, I know at least two other writers that specialize in working with coaches like I do, and it's fine. Like we
Mhm.
can,
There's so many coaches.
there's so many coaches, like, and I can only serve a few, like a handful.
Mhm.
So, if I don't have space in my if I don't have capacity, I can send them to someone else I know, and that's just a benefit.
Mhm.
That's and um competition isn't really a thing. We all do our work in our own ways. We have our own branding, our own style, and you know not every client is going to jive, um
Mhm.
and that's okay. And just I'm glad I have a huge network of writers kind of in my back pocket because I can always refer somebody. They want something that I don't tend to do. They want a long form sales letter, and I don't really do long form sales letters. But I know this writer that does, and they do a great
Mhm.
job. So head on over. Um, and it
Right,
just
and, and
benefits
and they'll
everybody.
refer to you in the same way, I'm sure.
Yeah, it just benefits everyone. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I think that's
yeah.
especially helpful probably for folks who are newer in the space. That like
hmm
making friends with other people who do what you do is actually a good idea,
Yeah,
instead
it's
of being
okay.
like,
Yeah, and sharing that knowledge because when it's that phrase like all boats rise in the tide. The more we know, the more we could stay ahead of the AIs. It's like the better our industry is going to survive this kind of chaotic time that we're in. So
yeah,
yeah.
I think that's definitely
Mm,
true.
yeah.
Um, so I'm curious to ask you, what are you working on right now that you're excited about?
Mm. I just got a new client. I'm working on his social media, and he kind of has a different way of doing things. So I'm just getting started and kind of assimilating his ideas through his blog posts, and then I'll be coming up um, with Instagram and LinkedIn for him. So it's fun to just kind of dive into a new brain and what they have to say to the world and their branding and how they want to express themselves, and then kind of internalizing that. So when I put out the content, it sounds like them, right?
Mhm.
It should always sound like my client and not like me because I'm just I'm the person behind the scenes, like
Mhm.
Pay no attention to the wizard behind the curtain. Uh, so I'm really excited about that. I'm actually probably working on that later today or tomorrow. So.
That's very cool. Yeah, it is always
Yeah.
fun to kind of get to do the brand research and get into that person's,
Get into their head
character a little bit.
Yeah.
And if people wanted to work with you or learn more about you, what would be the best place for them to find you?
Find me on LinkedIn, Erica Flynn Lovecraft. I think I'm still Flynn Lovecraft there. There are a ton of Lovecraft, so you'll be able to find me. That's probably the best place. I do have a website as well, but it's kind of out of date, so don't worry about it. or just email me, Erica@FlynnWrites, and I'll be happy to talk with you.
Awesome. And I'm curious if you have any like closing thoughts or anything that's like, burning to get out of you around the concept of anti-professionalism, entrepreneurship. Just is there anything in your brain that wants to get into this episode?
I'm just glad that multicolored hair is kind of a thing now. You could do that in corporate America. I know, like, it was kind of frowned upon for a long time. And it's just like a tiny little thing, right? But now it's kind of accepted, and I'm glad. So,
yeah. I think
Yeah.
Gen Z is going to keep moving that forward. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Gen Z won't tolerate anybody's like, no purple hair, screw you.
Yeah, they're like, I'll go over somewhere else.
Yeah. So.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for being here today, Erica. I
Thank
really
you for
appreciate
having
your
me.
time. Appreciate the cat cameo.
Yeah.
And very cute. I have an orange cat too.
Okay.
But he's not allowed in my office because he always knocks over my plants. But yeah, I just appreciate you being here. We'll probably close the episode up there, and I will post your links in the bottom of this episode. So thank you for being here. That is the end of episode 5. Everybody have a great day.
Thanks, Chuck.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll probably cut the recording there.
Okay.
Yeah, but definitely do send me any links that you want me to include in the notes. I'm happy to share, like, literally as many as you want, 10, 15, it doesn't matter. Or 3, whatever works for you. And this should go out in a couple weeks. I'm releasing 1 a week, and this is episode 5. So I have 4 in the backlog now. So it'll be out maybe next month.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And
I hope I wasn't just like a blithering idiot. I don't know.
Oh, no, not at all. Not at all. No, I think it was good. And I think the AI stuff is, relevant for people, and hearing your story, of shifting out of the corporate scene, I think is also helpful for people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I hope I assumed that the political talk was okay. So
Yeah. Especially, I mean, that was a very mild political talk, I think, especially,
okay. Yay.
Yeah, acknowledging like the human emotions that are present that we have to like stuff down. That's something we haven't really touched on yet. So that'll be fun to kind of weave into the final thing.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks so much.
Cool.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Well, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you very soon. Okie dokie, artichoke. That was episode 5 of the Anti-Professional Podcast. I am your host, Chuck Copenspire, owner and operator of IdentityPending.com, the digital marketing solution for bold businesses who want to disrupt their industries by doing something interesting for a change. I hope you have a beautiful day. Thanks so much for listening, and keep an ear and eye out for the next episodes. Bye.